and welcome to the debate. I'm your host, Maqbool, with you at PTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at some very important stories with reference to, of course, Pakistan's fight against terrorism. And we've discussed this, of course, recently in our shows as well, particularly in light of what has happened in Balochistan and the spate of terror activities that we've seen resulting in the loss of more than 50 lives, including, of course, civilians and security personnel. And this is something that has been noticed by the U.S. State Department as well. And we've heard the spokesperson talk about how they condemn this and they stand shoulder to shoulder with Pakistan on this front in the fight against terrorism. But what that means, of course, on ground in terms of the actual collaboration between both these countries and Pakistan's fight against terrorism is something that, of course, remains to be seen. So we're going to be taking a closer look into how this partnership can possibly evolve. We've also seen that previously also when questioned, we saw that the U.S. representatives talked about how this is all that they can say, that they can condemn this particular attack, but that's all that they have to give at the moment. And so the question with regards to what this partnership means on ground is still unclear, whether or not the U.S. would be willing to engage in this part of the world once again in terms of the fight against terrorism, what is going on, of course, in Afghanistan and the threats emanating from there, and how that, of course, poses an international threat as well. At the same time, of course, when questioned, there was also a response with regards to the Pakistan-Iran gas pipeline, whereby there was statement given to the fact that the sanctions that the U.S. has put in place against Iran will be there and will be something that the U.S. will continue to follow. But at the same time, it is going to be also something that is that they think is needed to be taken cognizance of when other countries are engaging with business deals with Iran. And so, although not blatantly, there has been a statement made with regards to what course of action is perhaps more preferred by the U.S. and expected maybe of its allies. So I'm going to take a look, of course, in terms of the fight against terrorism that Pakistan is putting forward, what the U.S. can do in this regard, and then what we can do internationally when we're talking about these threats at home, and particularly, of course, the role of the U.S. in this regard. That is going to be the focus of our show today. For this and more, as always in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Raja Faisal, and we've also been joined online by our guest, Brigadier retired Mr. Nawaz, who's a senior analyst, and Ambassador Saleem, President IRS as well. Thank you very much for joining us and being a part of the discussion today. And I'll start with you, Brigadier Harris, with reference to what we've seen coming in terms of the response by Pakistan, by its military installations, by its security personnel, by the government. And there has been this continuous resolve that is expressed, this reiteration of the kind of zero tolerance that we have, of the kind of policy measures that we're going to be taking, and how there's going to be enhanced and more coordinated effort in this regard. But I want your take in terms of what this means, particularly in terms of how we're dealing with these threats at home and how we're making sure that that sort of engagement, both on the political level and on the coordination level, exists between the federal and the provincial governments, and that we are also taking into account the kind of factors that have perhaps prevented that sort of reconciliation that is also needed to prevent terrorist activities from taking root in the provinces of KP and Balochistan, for example.
Very important. You can see the situation, what is happening in Balochistan and also KPK, and every day it's being enhanced by the terrorist activity. I recently saw how many our soldiers and Pakistanis were killed by the terrorist organizations, and the Pakistan Armed Forces reacted and they killed so many terrorists and they apprehended, and then there were a lot of things they revealed out how Afghanistan government is supporting and they facilitate it. Rather, even they're keeping quiet and looking other side when their infiltration being carried out. The problem you see that even recently the Core Command Conference Chief of Army Staff Nasim reiterated that they are determined to root out terrorism for Pakistan. Pakistan military will keep killing the terrorists, but the most important thing they have always highlighted is that the whole nation has to stand behind armed forces. All organs of the state of Pakistan have to be supporting these operations, because it's not you keep killing, the infiltration will keep happening, and they will keep coming to Pakistan, and again there will be unending problem. The only possibility that let's finish terrorism. And for that, the whole nation and the government support is supposed to be there, which I think we have realized now it is coming up. 20 billion have been released, and more, about 60 billion are promised, and hopefully those should be coming. But the important thing is that let's see how we can root it out. Only it has to be 3-4 pronged strategies. Number one, The military will keep fighting terrorists, and they will keep killing. There is no doubt about it. And that is what is the determination of recently Corps Commander Convo, also Chief Army Staff decided. But again, you to have to approach the nationalist party leaders who are there, like Akhtar Mangal, Dr. Malik, and so many others who have some reservations. But only those parties and those leaders who believe Constitution of Pakistan, they believe that they in state of Pakistan, then they one can talk and discuss and see what are their reservations. But all those who raise weapons and they fight and they kill army people or civil armed forces and Pakistani, no negotiation should be done. I think that the government and the armed forces are very clear about it. So you have to go, and then the important thing is those all whosoever go from ministers or senators or national assembly member, they must go to Balochistan, spend 7 days, talk to the parties, listen what do they want, what is the apprehension, what are the socio-economical environment, what is they need the support. I would talk about in terms of education, roads development, then is the hospitals, then job opportunities, everything we must listen and we provide it because that is very, very important. But national parties have their reservations have to be addressed. I think that is then one of the factors why the Akhtar Mangal has resigned today because I think he said he was not even invited. But I'm not very sure about it. So this is one of the factors. Then we have to go for internationally also. You see, we have to talk to American. Americans say we are with you, standing shoulder to shoulder. That doesn't suffice. You have left Afghanistan and left a lot of weapons and ammunition over there, and that has fallen into the hands of all terrorist organizations. When you had information about Al-Zawahiri and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, you killed them. Why don't you support Pakistan? Why don't you give military support, financial support? We have really our resources are being drained out, and economically we are all suffering. We don't see any response. Then India is being used as a proxy. What India is doing in Afghanistan, they in the Kabul embassy every day, every night they all sit BLA, BLF, Majid Brigade, Daesh, and TTP. They sit and coordination meeting under the supervision of RAW and Indian embassy. And then operations are being planned in Afghanistan and KPK. So where is the American? They have to see. That is what we say. It should be manifested or provide all information. And though ISA is very strong, we have got all basic information. And I feel the third prong strategy should be that our delegation, strong delegation with good communication skills, should go to again Afghanistan, talk to interim government, tell them what do you want. Only one thing: stop allowing infiltration from your side, which you promised in Doha agreement. That is not happening. Or what else? Be aware of what consequences you will face. We will go for surgical strikes, we will stop logistics, and then all illegal spectrum, all money, source of money coming to them through smuggling, through banking channels, through hundi system, all have to be cut because the moment this financial support is financial terrorism is stopped, I think the half of the job is done. So, and then of course we must send all Afghan refugees less registered in United Nations High Commission for Refugees. Rest 1.4 billion. Rest all should be sent. Let them the Afghanis feel the punch. Let them look after them. We have done a lot of hospitality. So these are the 3-4 pronged strategy. If it carry out, I think that is the only solution we have now left for Pakistan.
Right, and I'll discuss that in further detail with you again as well. But Jawhar Saab, I want your take also in terms of what we can do with regards to, of course, the threats emanating from outside of Pakistan, and then, of course, the partnerships that we see countries like the US and the role that they can play in this regard. And I understand that a lot of this, of course, is a general, perhaps, statement against terrorism or the fact that it is indeed condemnable. But in terms of any actual collaboration or any actual action point points or agendas that the US and Pakistan can actually look towards when the US says that it stands shoulder to shoulder with Pakistan. Is there anything more to that than just words in terms of what can actually be taken up and done both within and outside of Pakistan to deal with the issues of terrorism and, of course, those emanating from outside of Pakistan that are impacting the country, such as that of Afghanistan? Will the US be willing to engage on any front, in any capacity, which is more than just words?
Yeah, Pakistan and the US, they have a long history of collaboration in the fight against terrorism. And you see, US is a country with a great deal of capacity in terms of, like the security and defense technology, and then, in terms of intelligence gathering, and Pakistan and the US. In fact, the context of this statement, as we know, as media statements, was the meeting between the US ambassador and the deputy prime minister and the foreign minister, whereby the US was asked to support Pakistan in this fight against terrorism, and this came in the wake of a number of terrorist attacks that took place in Balochistan recently. And as we all know, the terrorism incidents in Pakistan have really risen considerably in recent times. In fact, this happened since the last year, but this year, in the first 8 or 9 months that we've had so far, 8 months, the number of incidents has gone really high, and we know that a lot of these incidents could be traced to the terrorist groups operating in Afghanistan with impunity, unfortunately. So, and for that, a lot of analysts have opined that a regional approach is required. Now, to build a regional approach, countries such as the US, Pakistan, they can collaborate with other countries in the region, because so far the bilateral approach has not really worked as well to put adequate pressure on the Afghan interim administration to fulfill the promises that they had made, promises that that they would not allow any terrorist groups to operate from their soil. And so I wouldn't say that you can't really call them just words, but if it's an intent, then but then this is an intent which has been publicly, and then as they say, it's not just talking the talk, but also walking the walk, which is important. So we'll see in the coming sort of months and sort of how this cooperation between us and the US in this particular area. And that is, we have to recall that this is in the interest of the US itself. Why? Because as per many media reports, global terrorist groups, which had in the past operated against the US, they have again started increasing their presence in Afghanistan, and these are and also like the terror groups operating in Balochistan, they're also getting support from there, and so I think it's in the interest of both the countries to ensure that whatever support or whatever safe haven or whatever space the terrorists are getting to operate, whether it's from within Afghanistan or elsewhere, it is curtailed, because it's not just Pakistan that is, but eventually, because this threat, and we have seen it in the past, the whole world knows that the threat emanating from the terrorist groups operating in Afghanistan, it spread to the whole world and led to the events such as 9/11 in the past. So it should not be it's not really something to be taken lightly. And I think this is a reiteration of that intent by the US, that it is in their as much as it is in the interest of Pakistan to work together for combating terrorism.
And Faisal, that's important, especially in terms of how the onus, of course, in terms of protecting our people, protecting our motherland, is on the country. And I understand that. But in terms of the efforts that have been taken both by the military, both by the government, and then, of course, in terms of how we are engaging with international stakeholders, be it even reiterating the Afghan Taliban regime for reassurances and for actual action, or, of course, putting forward the evidence that we have in terms of international spoilers on various platforms. That is what, of course, Pakistan is doing. And then with Azma Istikam, there's a lot that we're doing in order to, of course, engage our own different elements together and to have all of those players on a more coordinated front. But I want your take in terms of how much of that will have that impact that we need, because when we look at what's happening in Balochistan and KP, what we've seen, the number of lives that we have lost, the attacks that we have seen, it is of course also important to understand the limitations that we're experiencing and what sort of reevaluation perhaps is necessary to prevent that from happening again, and to making sure that whatever goes on inside Pakistan is something that we're looking after very, very seriously, and we're not letting anybody else exploit that.
Yes, and obviously, if we talk about the current military leadership and civil leadership, they are obviously doing what Pakistan as a country, since more than 20 years, Pakistan has been fighting against terrorism, and it is, of course, a continuous war which Pakistan has been fighting against the terrorism. In a way, if we say that for rest of the world, war on terror ended with withdrawal of US from Afghanistan, but here we are, Pakistan is still fighting the war. Reason being, of course, there are stakes of different countries. I mean, I would openly say India on our eastern border, it has stakes within Afghanistan that they keep on using against Pakistan, and of course there are certain reasons they are using for it. And when it comes to America and the other the other mightiest countries of the West, they already know that this is going on, and on certain occasions Pakistan has been, of course, giving the dossiers as well to reiterate the facts that India is, of course, trying to disrupt peace in Pakistan, trying to disrupt Pakistan's economic endeavors in shape of CPAC, and of course after the Eastern Ladakh or Galwan attack which took place back in 2019. Since then, of course, what we are seeing that there is a sort of modus operandi by Indians which is being applied in Afghanistan by using people of Afghanistan, be they NDS or be they TTP or BLA, BLF, whoever is available to them. They are investing in terrorism to, of course, attack Pakistan, and them attacks, they have been taking place continuously, and it is our, of course, valiant or valorous, I must say, the forces of Pakistan and the intelligence services of Pakistan, they have been continuously, of course, safeguarding Pakistan against this menace. But when it comes to all of the powerful Western countries, knowing the facts, the ground realities, and whatever is going on in Afghanistan by India especially, they are quiet on this. And why they are quiet? Because they have larger, in the larger context, they have more to do with India. Of course, they are having a sort of a trade war going on with China. In that trade war, they see India as their ally, and in that context, of course, they ignore all of these facts. But time is not far when, of course, US itself would be accepting that, of course, India has been promoting terrorism, India has been facilitating terrorism, financing terrorism,
but
and
Faisal,
the very terrorism.
Has it been a matter of accepting or not doing anything despite accepting?
Well, it's not the matter of acceptance. It is knowing the facts. I mean, they know better than us. They know better than us who's doing it. But still they keep quiet just because of one reason, that they see India as their policeman in the region, and they want to use India's presence in the region, and they simply shut their eyes on whatever the discrete activities or clandestine activities or designs they have in Afghanistan for Pakistan or for any other neighboring country for the sake of course, China. Everyone knows that they have it, but they still keep the eyes shut on that only because of that reason. When it comes to ISIS Khorasan, ignore, let's for an instant ignore TTP, ignore BLA, BLF, but when it comes to ISIS Khorasan is not only a threat for Pakistan but the entire world. Why I say this? Because it's the backyard, is the training ground for ISIS itself. And when it comes to ISIS, ISIS is a phenomenon which is not only a threat for Pakistan or Middle East or Asia itself, it is a threat for the whole world. Because in past we have seen that there were incidents that took place in the West, and the footprints, they were of course reaching out to ISIS itself. So ISIS Khorasan, if it is being indirectly funded or directly funded by the Indians, then eventually in a year's time or 2 years' time, we will be seeing that every finger would be pointed towards India, and that's when Americans would say, oh yeah, this is what is happening. Why not now? Because it is only affecting Pakistan, that's why you are quiet. And when it would start affecting the whole world, then you would start speaking about it, that of course ISIS Khorasan is being funded by India. Why not now?
Absolutely, I understand that. And Brigadier Harris, I want your take on that as well, but add to that in terms of the fact that this has happened many times before, that Pakistan has actually put forward these dossiers, put forward the details and this evidence, and then we saw that it wasn't really something that is coming only out of Pakistan, but also from international bodies as well, putting forward the kind of propaganda campaigns and involvement of state terrorism coming in from India, and of course other elements as well. And so this is something that is well known to the international community, well known to the US as well. And so when it talks about this stance that it has against terrorism, I want the way that this information and evidence is being absorbed and where exactly is it impacting, because while we can of course keep on reiterating what's happening, and it's very, very clear to the world, we've seen in other examples around the world in conflict situations as well, even if situations are obvious and we know who's responsible, still there is no accountability. So can we really expect accountability on the issues of involvement of terrorist activities from governments outside of Pakistan, from state elements from outside of Pakistan that we know and have evidence against?
You see, we have all the information. We have got the dossiers, but the Indian propaganda is very strong. They have the websites, and then of course the Disinfo Lab, what all they have been doing it, and they've got so many fake news is already there. So they have a very strong grip over there. The important thing is the Americans and European Union, they know what India is doing there. They have all the evidence. And secondly, they've got satellite communication with them, and that they are very clear what India is doing. Indian leadership has openly said we are interfering in Balochistan. We want Balochistan to be separated. And this is what we are supporting. Openly they think, have you heard any word or a voice from our friends USA? That's more important. Then what they have done, Indians, international terrorism, they killed Sikh leader in Canada, they killed Sikh leader in USA. What happened? Only lip service, talking few days, and that's the end of it. Had this happened in Pakistan, things would have been totally different. India is getting 50% rebate oil from Iran openly. Even now, USA is quiet. Iran has brought right the pipeline on the Balochistan border, and they are not allowing openly. Matthew Miller has recently said, we know the implication the country was going to import should know, and we have a ban on sanctions on Iran. So, and that is the key to our success. We have to gas crisis. Then we want to have a CPEC, we want the Gwadar port to be operationalized, because then it is going to give connectivity, Central Asia, Afghanistan and Gwadar, China, Gwadar, and then it's all open trade will go to Africa and the Middle East. But we are not being allowed because India is interfering in Balochistan. Openly, they are supporting BLA, BLF, BNA, Majid Brigade, TTP, Daesh, ISIS, the way Faisal has said, which is a threat to the international world. I would say all these, recently United Nations initiated a report. Al-Qaeda is again coming up, having broader base in Afghanistan. They're training these organizations. Ultimately, again, they might create problem for the Europe or the Americans, but they are keeping quiet because they are the strategic partners. They have a 2+2 group, Japan, Australia, India, and USA. Then India is being used as proxy against China in South China Sea. You know what is happening over there. Then, of course, Ladakh, and then they are using proxy in Balochistan. So America, if we want Pakistan should be economically prospering, then we need to done with this terrorism, and have Americans supported financially, militarily, operational support plan. Nothing is there. They left Afghanistan, left a lot of weapon ammunition, fell into the hands of the terrorist organization, and now we are facing the music. So in that context, I say the government of Pakistan must again prepare a very strong dossier. We should go to the United Nations, we should go to the USA, we should go to the OIC, European Union, and
Brigadier Harris, will that help? Because we've sent dossiers before. We have gone down that route. Does it help to do it again?
whether it is helped, it doesn't help. We have to continue pondering. We have to continue pushing it. That's more important because now things are getting more worse. What Israel is doing in Palestine and Gaza, it is going encouraging India to do the same in Kashmir. Let me tell you very clearly. And this is what they have been doing recently. Their houses are demolished, their business are finished, their orchards are cut to raise to grounds. Youth is in prison. They want to push them to the Azad Kashmir the way they want Palestine to be pushed to Egypt and Jordan. So things are happening. We have to find now. This is a time. A foreign office should be very proactive. And then the Islamabad, all ambassadors are there. We have to go and brief them. Then we have to tell the UK government, which is their unfinished agenda. We have to see that also. And also the unity. We need unity in Pakistan. And that is we are suffering. The Chief of Minister of the Assembly has said many times, we need to stand united to counter this internal and external threat and the narrative of Indians to divide armed forces and the people of Pakistan and then weaken the Federation of Pakistan. So things are getting worse. And this is one of the factors Mr. Akhtar Mengal is resigning. Here, we should take it very seriously. And we have to find ways to find a solution and sit down with the political national parties, bloc parties, and then we see what they want to say. But those who accept constitution and the country, state of Pakistan, that's very important. But all those raise weapons, kill Pakistani armed forces, no negotiation. The operation must continue. So these are the factors I think we have to harmonize as a unity, as a cohesive force, as a Pakistanis. Only then we have to counter all this, what is happening.
Pastor Johar, there's also discussion that, of course, has been going around for a while with regards to digital terrorism, and that's an important aspect when we talk about the fight against terrorism. And while, of course, there have been measures and efforts done previously, also in this regard, there seems to be a lot more emphasis on cybersecurity and the internet being a safe place and not being used to incite violence and for acts of terrorism. And I understand the importance of it. But I want your take in terms of the international best practices as well, in terms of how the international audience is actually viewing Pakistan and the efforts in this regard, and also in terms of what the National Assembly and the Cabinet has also talked about of a web monitoring system and how it helps in terms of this online digital content that they want to be able to oversee and monitor, and of course then prevent these attacks from happening. So I want your take in terms of how important this is, how essential it is, and especially in the ways that it has to be implemented, keeping that balance between what comes across safely by people with their expressions of their opinions, and also that content which incites violence or which can result in acts of terrorism to be curtailed. And then, of course, in terms of accountability, both by the political and the religious elite that may or may not be involved in digital terrorism.
Well, that's an important subject, definitely. Just before that, I'll just say a few words of what is said by Faisal and the esteemed panelists. You see, we have to understand that realpolitik is there in the world, and that's how the international relations is played. It's all about interests of the countries, and this is not right now. India's placement in the Western chessboard, the global strategic chessboard, is not just about trade war with China. It is about containment of China. So it's much beyond that. And yes, there are instances where when you have these type of phases, then some of the things that countries do can be overlooked. However, having stated that, but when these targeted assassinations took place, when the Indians did that in many instances in Pakistan, but then also in Canada, in the US, in the UK, there was quite a lot of hue and cry about that. And after that, I think the Indians became much more cautious. So in some ways, it kind of it made them rethink the whole policy. But now going back to the subject that you mentioned, we just did a few days back, we did a sort of conference on that. Responsible journalism is very important in the world today, because see, journalism or media is not about, its job is not just to inform, but also to educate the public. And that is something what mainstream media used to do for like decades and decades. And that is why the electronic media or the print media was given such high importance by everyone. It's not just we used to get informed by this media, but also if you would recall, as kids or teenagers, people would that's where they would learn current affairs or even how to write better English or Urdu or whatever. Now in this day and age of digital media and social media, it is becoming quite challenging to where you get the sort of the correct information. How about the veracity of whatever information you get? Because it's only the mainstream media, responsible media, which can do that. Because on the one hand, social media, what it has done is it has given the individual a voice. But on the other hand, what has happened is that on the social media, it's so chaotic and it's so subjective that it's very hard to get objective news, objective information, and you cannot really find that element of education there. So that is why I think this is a challenge not just for Pakistan. It's a challenge for the Western world as well. I see, like even the Western youth these days, in so many countries, you see why populism is growing so strong. You see why right wing is becoming, ultra right wing in so many countries. The ultra right wingers are becoming so popular, far right. For instance, just in German elections, recent state elections were the first time since the Second World War. AfD, which is a far right party, it won elections in a couple of states there. You see similar situations happening even in the UK. The recent riots. What happened? It was basically led by a fake news on media or a misinformation campaign on the social media, and that led to sort of triggering the worst riots in UK history for the last 10 years. So I think this is something to combat that. What we need to do is that the mainstream media, particularly the electronic media, needs to perhaps extend its reach. The mainstream media needs to have a greater presence on digital platforms, so that people should still know, even those youth who do not even access sort of mainstream TV channels, so to speak, or print media, so to speak. But if the mainstream media would be available to them on sort of YouTube, for instance, or Instagram, or all these Facebook or whatever they get the news from, then of course they will have some sources for checking the veracity of whatever information they get. So I think there has to be a balance, and that balance has to be found probably and we hope that in the coming years the governments would collaborate on that to show that while on the one hand, whatever social media has enabled in terms of more freedom and sort of more and better access to information stays intact, but on the other hand, there's the possibility of fake news, possibility of spreading misinformation and disinformation and hate and sort of divisive type of philosophies, convoluted philosophies, that could be curtailed. So it is a challenge, but it's not just a challenge for Pakistan, it's a challenge for the whole world right now.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Johar Saleem, for joining us and being a part of the discussion today. Brigadier Harris, I'll come back to you with this question as well, because in terms of accountability, there's of course a lot of talk in terms of what actions even the military installations are taking with regards to protecting the digital space, and then of course accountability across the board. And that of course not only involves the military institutions, but it also involves the political and religious elite. And I keep mentioning that because it's important in terms of where we are today in in terms of our fight against terrorism and those that are responsible in bringing us to this situation. We've won terrorism before, and this is a situation that has come back again because of failed decisions or reckless behaviors. And so we need to also streamline where does the accountability also extend to, and how will that be taken on board, particularly when we talk about the political and religious elite and the digital space also that they occupy and the way that influences the people in general.
You see that, Sana, this is very important because the accountability has to be immediately, because we say justice delayed, justice denied. So all Pakistan military has a very self accountability, and I think even this recently concluded Corps Commander Conference, Chief Army Staff had categorically said that we have very particularly, and we believe discipline, and all military officers, troops, they are loyal to state of Pakistan and to the military, and that's what is all. There is no doubt about it, and no compromise. Anybody violating will be dealt with squarely and very squarely. That's the thing. Then important thing is, you see, the judiciary. Our judiciary has to be very, very prompt in these things. Where things are happening against state or even digital terrorism, this is a very serious. Fifth generation war, this is the most important tool when they divert the mind of that targeted country. It's not Pakistan, I'm talking any country. So anybody violating that has to be dealt squarely. Of course, immediately inquiry should be done, and then the court has to decide prompt action. They should not take 7 months or 8 years, or 6 months, 6 years. That's why Army has been telling that at least hand over few who are really involved in 9th May, that they should be handed to military courts, and we do expeditiously while ensuring that all justice is being done. There is no compromise on justice. Defense counsel is given, time is given, all defense witnesses are brought forward, only then decisions are taken, but it is portrayed differently. Likewise, at political level, also the political government has to be very supportive in this aspect. They have a political differences, political problem, and they have a pressure from the political parties. But one thing should be very clear. Anybody talking state of Pakistan, security forces, and trying to create a divide between military and the people of Pakistan, they should never be spared. And likewise, social media, those who are doing it, or for that, you should have very stringent rules. They've already worked out. But then you should have a countermeasure also. And the countermeasures are keep the people of Pakistan happy. They must have a confidence in the sitting government. And for that, you have to bring the prices, commodity prices down. People should be happy. That parents should be able to give good education to their children, right? The father should have a good job or business, whatever he is doing it. Commodity prices should be down. Livelihood should be more easy. Then they will not go to fake news. Then they will not go to enemy propaganda on the social media. Then they will look toward government that, no, they are doing a great job and we're very happy for the government. Let them complete 5 years and then we'll see what happens. These are the countermeasures for just courts, then accountability and relief to people of Pakistan. This is the strategy. If we work out, I think we could deny enemy narrative, which is very aptly coming, at least these days, coming heavily on Pakistan.
Right. Thank you very much, Brigadier Haris Nawaz, for joining us and being a part of the debate. Faisal, I'll come to you. And when we take a look at all of this, of course, at the end of the day, it is also important in terms of what we can do about the whole situation and how we tend to implement it. And I understand that the Azma-e-Istikam, that was, of course, launched by the Prime Minister and supported, of course, by our military installations and whoever's on ground dealing with the situation is important. But at the same time, we saw that a lot of that also saw some sort of political hindrances as well. And so the way that we want to be able to engage all the stakeholders is important, and the way that we want accountability to be remain in different sectors and different people is of course important as well. But how will we see the fundamentals today than how we did in the past when perhaps the National Action Plan was put forward, both kinetic and non-kinetic aspects, because it seems that there's a lot learning coming in from what we've done previously as part of the National Action Plan and what we can do now. So I want your take in terms of a sort of analysis as to what fundamentally is required as part of our National Action Plan, what aspects that were missing that need to be incorporated, and how will this implementation differ from that of the past?
Yes, Sanna, it's a brilliant question, and of course, how to make people aware of what kind of action which is being planned, especially in the this superb case of Azme Estakam, when we remember when he came and we did a program on it. And the whole program was related to, of course, there were a few segments of the political parties who were disagreeing with it, and they were simply saying that we will not allow this to happen, because once again we will be going through the same exercise without understanding that it had nothing to do with a full-fledged attack on certain parts of KPK or somewhere else, but it was more of a statement in which it was said that as we know that our economy is being hit, our economic endeavors in shape of CPAC are being hit. So, we have to of course improve, and we have to increase the number of IBOs which we are conducting. So, it had nothing to do with a fresh attack somewhere or something like that, but of course, it was a case of super case of misunderstanding and then disinformation which was being propagated on social mediums that was seen. How we can of course counter these kind of activities on social mediums? Well, we remember when last time around, right after the APS attack, what we saw that there was a set mechanism of the media, of the digital media, which was applied, and all of the media houses, they were on board, and of course the sort of the strategy, it was so successful that even on the social media it was seen everywhere that it was the whole nation coming together to fight against the terrorism at once. Same is the case, I mean, Pakistan is standing in a similar condition right after the Balochistan attack, in which of course we know that most of the eyes of the population of Pakistan, they have moved away from the TV screens and they have gone towards the social media screens. I mean, they have gone towards their own mobile phones. Once again, I think the strategy needs to be applied in which the social mediums, they need to be used for of course the immediate source of promotion or anything that needs to be promoted within the masses, and social media, from social media it can actually reach towards the digital media. Previously we saw it was the digital mediums that were the immediate source of the news, and of course it was being carried out on the social mediums, but this time around is the social media is the opposite side, because there are so many YouTube channels who have more viewership than the TV channels itself. So, I think that mode needs to be applied, number one, and number two, when it comes to overall fighting against the fake news and the fake narratives and the kind of the menace which social media is turning out to be, the only way to fight against it is that we as a nation, we need to of course introduce few things in our syllabus, in which of course we can introduce how to counter or how to figure out what is fake news and what is not, and what are the boundaries which can be applied on anything which you are going to use or you are going to post on social mediums. So, there must be blue thin lines drawn, and them lines when drawn need to be of course be part of our academic courses,
right,
in which of course we can tell our students or the next generation that these are the red lines you should not be crossing. Because I always say, there is a difference between freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and there is a difference between freedom of speech and at the same time freedom to of course propagate against a society, and of course inciting the violence within a society.
Absolutely.
What we saw in recent times in Pakistan, I mean, majority of the people, they say, oh, our right to our freedom of expression, it is being snatched. It's not the freedom of expression, it's you are free sitting somewhere else, you are free to actually incite violence in Pakistan. That needs to be actually
Absolutely.
simply washed away now.
Right, and of course there are efforts in that regard, and we understand the importance of freedom of expression as well, that of course needs to be incorporated, but the fight of course remains with the issue of terrorism, and as you said, Faisal, that's very, very important. Thank you for being part of the debate and of course talking to us about these issues, because this is important when we deal with terrorism both physically and digitally, and this is of course going to be fundamental to the success of our fight against terrorism, and whether or not there are other partners involved is something that Pakistan must do to protect its own country and its people. That's all that we have from the debate. We'll now see you tomorrow.